Okay, who do we have? All right, I think. All right, well, we can get started. So, for those of you that are on the speaker panel, I've made you co-hosts. Not everybody is here yet, but what I would like to do is first go live to Facebook. I can't play the music on Facebook, otherwise they will give me copyright infringement issues. So if you'll give me a second to type out the Facebook thing, then we'll go ahead and really go live. Okay, we are live. So welcome to Undercovered Magazine's presentation of a DemEnter discussion. We've invited several progressive activists from across the country to join us this evening to discuss what it looks like to be a part of transforming the party from within. What are we doing with the inside-outside strategy? What sort of personal experiences have we faced so far? And why are we doing this in the first place? Why does it matter? So what I'll do right now is give an opportunity for the panelists who are with us at this moment, an opportunity to introduce yourself. And then as we're waiting for the rest of them to arrive, I will play an interview with a piece on Bernie Sanders that explains why some of us got inspired to do this. So let me start off with Mondale Robinson. Are you available? Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing in the movement?
Absolutely. First, let me apologize for my wedding, and of course, they are late, and I'm still on. So we just
We're having some sound issues with you.
I am the founder of Black Men Vote. Yeah. Do
you want to try and log back in? Mondale, do you want to try and log back in? Okay. While we're waiting for Mondale to join back in, Wade, do you want to go?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my name is Wade Alexander. I am the vice president of a local Democratic club, the Antelope Valley Progressive Democrats. I'm the chair for Progressive Democrats of America Antelope Valley chapter, and I'm also the chair for Our Revolution Antelope Valley. And I'm just happy to be here to talk about my experiences with DemEnter politics and pushing the needle forward on progressive policy and supporting progressive candidates, and to share my knowledge of organizing in this capacity over the past decade. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Wade. Iyad, would you like to go next? Okay, Mondale, were you able to get your sound back? Are you guys having trouble unmuting? Oh, I think I need to make him a co-host again.
Can you hear me now? It wouldn't allow me to unmute myself.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm running through an airport. American Airlines has me late, which is why my video's not on, so I apologize. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Great. I am Mondale Robinson, founder of Black Male Voter Project, and it's a wonderful opportunity to be here. I was supposed to be with you all a few months ago, but dealing with what was going on in Georgia and also The other 16 states we operate in, we're extremely busy. So Black Male Voter Project is the only sole purpose of increasing Black men's participation in electoral politics in an effort to increase
Thank you so much for
our work seemed like it may have been in vain this past elections.
Well, we'll have a lot more questions for you if you hopefully you have a little bit of time before your flight leaves, but we'll, I'm sure, have more questions for you about that project and whether you're expanding into additional states.
Cool beans.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Okay, so I are you available? Can we have you introduce yourself? Well, he may have stepped away. So let's do this. I will go ahead and play the video that I mentioned, which is a news clip that Bernie did right after Trump was elected and when he was doing the unity tour with Tom Perez. So at this point, the Democratic Party realized that progressives were a force to be reckoned with, and they knew that they would not be able to defeat Trump if they didn't start including us and reaching out to the progressive base. So I'm going to go ahead and share that real quick. Do we have sound?
Yes.
Bernie Sanders is out with a new book today aimed at teaching young Americans how to win in progressive politics. And even though he himself didn't win in 2016, he's leaving the door open to another run in 2020.
Are you running again?
Wow, it's a little bit early to talk about that. Let's focus on the issues impacting the American people.
We'll take that as a yes.
As Sanders looks towards that possibility, he seems to be changing his strategy and his tone.
In just over a year, Bernie Sanders went from presidential primary loser to the de facto leader of the Democratic Party.
Let's welcome the senator from Vermont, the Honorable Bernard Sanders.
Recent polls show he's the most popular U.S. politician, and he's raising money without even trying, bringing in $1.5 million in the first half of the year by sending just 4 fundraising emails.
I have been introduced on many occasions. I can't quite recall an introduction like that. Thank you very much.
He's done this without actually becoming a Democrat.
You are talking to the longest-serving independent in the history of the United States.
But he's still sort of embracing the party.
If you want to be critical of Democrats, I'm with you. There's a lot that we can criticize. So the place that I am in right now is to try to transform the Democratic Party, to open it up to people like you.
This is a shift from his much more direct 2016 campaign rhetoric.
What the system is designed to do, what corporate media is designed to do, is to tell you that we cannot achieve real change. That the only thing that you can accept is incremental, tiny little changes.
Remember, he's the guy whose rabid fan base almost derailed last year's Democratic National Convention. Waging that campaign, divisive as it was, earned Sanders a seat at the Democratic Party table, and he wants to keep it. Even Ralph Nader, an outsider presidential candidate in his own right, understands why.
I think he wants to win. And short of winning, to be strong enough inside the Democratic Party to push them toward a more progressive agenda and away from a Wall Street corporatist agenda.
But that sort of undermines his image as this independent reformer outsider guy.
No, I don't think he's compromised his major agendas. I think that's the way he lives with his conscience. He said, yes, I'm in the inside. I'm surrounded by corporate Democrats, but I've got a much bigger base out there than they have, and maybe I can push them in terms of their own survival in 2018 and 2020 in my direction.
There is a general national consensus that the Democratic Party is beginning to move more in our direction than in the other side's direction.
One way Sanders could pull the party in his direction is by threatening to use his grassroots army to primary challenge establishment Democrats, something many of his supporters want. Do you think he should support primary challenges?
Absolutely. Yeah, the primary challenges make our party better.
Doesn't that risk, though, alienating some of the Democratic voters that he is courting?
Yeah, I mean, I think what really matters is supporting candidates who are going to be in the right place on the issues.
But on his biggest policy push, Medicare for All, Sanders isn't ready to drive a wedge in the party. Would you back primary challenges to Democrats who don't support Medicare for all?
That's political gossip, which I'm not particularly interested in.
And when Sanders explains his decision to play the long game, he now sounds more like a politician than a revolutionary. You yourself admitted to NPR that there's no chance of it passing with
Well, you got
So why are you pushing a play that you don't think it
No, that's not the right question. I mean, nothing that's significant. If we were to pass, and I hope and believe we will, Medicare for all, a good majority of the American people believe we should expand Medicare to all people. And we have got to organize effectively in every state in this country to make that happen.
Well, why talk about it if you can't get it done right now?
Because that's the way change always happens. Why do you think the minimum wage now all over this country is at $15 an hour? Do you think that happened overnight? People have been talking about it for a long time. What about gay rights? What about women's rights? Things don't happen overnight. And especially when you're taking on the entire political establishment, you have to begin someplace. And our job now is to mobilize people to talk about the advantages, the cost effectiveness, the human right that healthcare is. So you got to start someplace, and that's what we're going to do.
What do you say to Democrats who say you're going to...
Thank you.
The thing is, if Bernie is serious, that he wants to get priorities like Medicare for All done eventually, he needs the Democratic Party establishment to work with him. So in April, Sanders tried to appease them by joining DNC Chairman Tom Perez on a unity tour. It was partly designed to convince Sanders supporters the DNC wasn't totally evil. It didn't work too well.
Let me thank Tom Perez for his remarks.
And Sanders can't play too nice with the party anyway, because he built a movement railing against it. He has to be careful not to lose that authenticity. So just a month later, when he spoke to a conference full of Bernie diehards, the Democratic Party was the enemy again.
The current model and the current strategy of the Democratic Party is an absolute failure.
This frenemy status drives the party establishment crazy. But Sanders knows they have to live with it.
All right, can I see that baby cow?
Because the bloc he controls is critical to their future, at least through 2018.
Oh my God. Oh.
Oh, I didn't unmute. My apologies, Jojo. Okay, so Iyad, are you back available? Can we have you introduce yourself? I'm trying to get him to unmute. Yeah. You sound very, very far away. Yeah. Are you able to turn up your volume at all so that we could so you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what your some of your roles and what you've been doing with the to transform the party?
I'm sorry, are you talking to me or someone else?
I am talking to you, yes.
Oh,
introduce
I'm sorry.
yourself, please.
Okay, let me just switch. Too much light behind me.
And thank you so much for coming here tonight.
Oh,
Thanks so
sorry, I am in our other house. We are selling the house, so it's kind of like someone walk in and I have to put myself on mute. Good afternoon, siblings. My name is Iyad Afalqa, and I am the president of California Democratic Council, which is the umbrella for the grassroots clubs across the state of California. And also an executive board member of California Democratic Party. And I have been a delegate elected and appointed since 2013 in California. My journey with the Democratic Party reform to turn the Democratic Party, make the Democratic Party democratic with a small d, it has been almost 2 decades now. I started as a Democrat at that time, and that's how I became involved with PDA, which is the Progressive Democrats of America. Since the inception, I was a college student at that time. Almost gave up so many times, but I stayed in the party because the establishment of the party, they always want people progressive like myself and new voices to go away. So we defeated the status quo and kept speaking truth to power and training other people and making sure that I am the voice for the voiceless, and making sure that we are sticking to our principles. Being a Democrat and being principled, sometimes it had to be 2 people. But in my case, I had to pay heavy price for being true to my values and also fighting for the underdog. That's enough or some more?
well, you're going to have lots of opportunities to speak on the call. Thank you, Iyad. And just to mention, he's a very fiery character in our Democratic Party, and definitely gets heard. Your voice is absolutely heard. Okay, let's go to Dr. Lawana Richmond. Are you available to introduce yourself? And
I am. And forgive the photo. I'm looking crazy because I've been running all over today. So I'll spare you all the disarray. So I came into this whole thing as I guess the best word to describe me would be a political outsider. My background is in community organizing, and I'm a process engineer by trade. I ran for school board because I felt like the children in my district were not, they were not being prioritized in terms of what was the center of the conversation. I believe, despite everyone else's interest, that in K through 12, the students should be the #1 priority. With that being said, I just said what I said what I meant and meant what I said, because I felt like I was either going to win the election as myself and continue to be myself as I served in that capacity, or people were going to choose something other than what I actually am. So I raised $20,000 and I got 45% of the vote. My candidate spent $400,000 to beat me. After it was all over, because I guess you could say I ran with integrity, I got appointed to the Central Committee as co-chair of the Candidate Evaluations Committee, because I expressed some concerns about the process whereby candidates are being vetted for endorsement. And I also got elected to be president of the Democratic Women's Club of San Diego County, where I get the opportunity to work with women to elevate issues and pass resolutions. So I've been busy passing resolutions primarily in support of criminal justice reform. And I'm an Afrofuturist. So all of this, being said, I continue my efforts with the Black Speculative Arts Movement. And I suspect that there will come a moment, in fact, I anticipate that the moment will come that you will see less and less of me as I become more entrenched in my futurist work and think tank work, because I only believe in being present in a space where my presence is making a difference. And the day I don't feel like my presence is making a difference, I won't be there anymore.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Lawana. Okay, and so we still have a couple of other people that might be jumping in a little bit later, but I also would like to give an opportunity for my co-host, Joe Schreck, to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased to be on a Zoom with all of you at once. That's wonderful. This is a subject that over the last few years I've taken some heat about, because I was not DemEnter in 2016. I was in 2020, so I learned a lot, and that continues today. And I'm here to facilitate the discussion and help with questions and things. So glad to be here. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jojo. And my name's Jenna Beck. I'm the co-founder of Undercovered magazine. I also DemEntered. I was already a registered Democrat, but I was not participating in politics until Trump unfortunately won the 2016 election. And I realized how dire our future was at that point, and how disappointing it was that Bernie was not able to advance out of the primary. And I wanted to understand why. So I spent the last 4.5 years trying to understand how the party works, how politics works, and how we could actually make a difference and flood the party and try and take over the numbers and actually get the policy changes that we're looking for. So the first question that I will put out to the panelists is, you've already talked a little bit about your background and what it is that you're doing individually. What was it that really inspired you, if not, the whole Bernie thing like me? What was your calling to getting involved? And how did you figure out where you fit in this movement and how you could actually make a difference? Because you're all making a difference today. And so feel welcome to just jump in and have a coffee table conversation about this.
Can I start?
Yeah, yes, you can.
Okay, so what got me involved, right, was in activism and in politics and in the progressive movement in general. I got involved starting in 2013 with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Politically, when I first got involved, I actually was not a registered Democrat. I was registered through the Green Party, right? And I've worked with third-party organizations for many years prior to being a Democrat, and I just found it to be an echo chamber and for it to be ineffective. The values were right. All the values that were spoken about were spot on. It's just there wasn't any power behind any of those third-party organizations, despite the fact that they had been as well established, some of them for at least several decades, right? So I found organizing within the Democratic Party just to be in a more effective means of being a progressive organizer, right? And the people that talk about Dem-exit, about leaving the Democratic Party, a lot of what they call out is absolutely on the spot, right? Like the corruption in the party, right? What they're lacking, though, is the strategy to actually do anything about it, right? They see that the party leadership and the powerful legislators and the business interests all coordinate, right? And that is absolutely true. But one second, sorry about that. But the way to defeat it, I would say, is to organize as a progressive within the party, to speak truth to power, to be in the room where the decisions are being made, and to cause some noise. And most importantly of all is to run progressive Democratic candidates. that's the best thing you can do to transform the Democratic Party from within and to make a difference is to recruit, train, and run progressive candidates to run for office from the ground up, from city council seats to water board seats, all the way up to Congress and even president. As long as progressives are organizing and we're consistently doing it within the Democratic Party, eventually we will win because the voters are on our side of the issues, right? The voters realize and support policies like Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, a living wage for workers. These are policies that are popular. So as long as we're organized and we're recruiting effective candidates from the bottom up, I believe that we're gonna win more and more, and progressivism will be the future.
Wonderful, thank you. Mondale, would you like to go next? Because I know that you're probably trying to catch a flight. I see that you're unmuted.
Can't hear me. You all can't hear me?
Yeah, it's still a little bit hard, but you can try.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm gonna start talking because this flight is gonna take off at any moment, and it's extremely important that I think we point out the fact, Jenna, that's a wonderful question, but I think it's centered around whiteness. Black people don't choose politics. There's no moment when you decide to play politics. I was born in 1979 in North Carolina, what is considered the progressive South. And what I saw was my father, who was the son of a sharecropper, get a felony conviction, 17, for defending his mother on that farm. And those decisions to defend his mother on a farm that was neither his, his father, but they were obligated to work every day, even before or after or even instead of school for him. It affected my life, my entire life, because my father had a felony conviction, which limited what he could or couldn't do in life and what he would and wouldn't be. And so seeing this destruction of what a wonderful man my father was and is, but what he couldn't be was limited. And I think that made me move, but I think that's not a unique story. I think in so many cases, Black people are forced to be political creatures because of our lived experience in this country. And if we don't acknowledge that, then I think we are already starting at a deficit. Like we don't get to choose this cycle we'll play politics or next cycle we won't. We're obligated because when we don't, our communities die. Literally, that's not hyperbole. As it pertains to what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to rethink how we play politics and taking out the transactional nature that exists in the current way we do electoral politics. Give me 1 second, let him finish talking.
Mondale, if before you take off as well, if you can still hear me, if you're able to drop any chats for any of the organizations that you're working on right now into the chat, I will share that with the replay of this video.
And what I'll do is, Jenna, thank you for that. What I'll do is I'll try to log onto the Wi-Fi so I won't be able to comment, but I'll be able to leave chat messages. So what I was going to say was Black Male Voter Project is the only national organization with the sole purpose of increasing Black men's participation. This is a failure of the Democratic Party and nothing else. I mean, for so often we play politics and we blame voters for not participating in elections. But in actuality, we know people vote because of the amount of resources spent on them. And when we don't spend resources on voters, they don't participate. And because the Democratic Party chooses to prioritize white conservative voters over their base, Black voters, brown voters, progressive white-leaning voters, then we have this deficit in people that are participating. My organization said we're going to throw out politics and we're going to bring in psychology. We use the lessons learned from Maslow hierarchy needs to engage Black men, knowing that if people don't have their basic needs met, they can't think about things that are self-actualization. And the way we see voting right now, we being Black men, it's seen as self-actualization. So my organization used behavior psychology to move voting from self-actualization closer to Black men, seeing it as a tool to better affect their lives and their lived experiences and tie that into voting. This is how we increase Black men's participation. And I'm proud to say that my organization in Georgia, Kentucky, in Pennsylvania, and in Mississippi last cycle turned out more Black men than Barack Obama did. And it's not just because there are more Black men registered, because we only targeted the Black men that were eligible to vote for Barack Obama, but did not participate in 2008 or 12. So these are not kids, these are grown men who are at least 30 years old in age, and they just didn't see themselves reflected in what was being said in our current way we play politics. So we created a new way addressing these brothers, and it's extremely effective. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Who would like to go next? Dr. Lawana, maybe?
Sure. So, I have to double down on what Mondale said. Yeah, it was not about choosing, I eschew politics, but the reality is people are creating policies and laws that are having a direct impact on communities of color. And unless we're in the room, we can't make sure our voices are heard. The extent to which that really matters is suspect, because sometimes I think I get invited into spaces to come be Black for people so they can say, look, we have Black friends and we listen to what they say. I don't want to just be heard. I want to see action that comes as a result of what I said. And so, they say that the people who don't believe it's possible should stop talking and get out of the way of the people who are making it happen. And I think that that is appropriate for many spaces. And I think that, I can say that I've had a great deal of frustration with some of the games and, a reference to the transactional nature of politics. I actually had someone say to me that they think I'm a great person, they think I'm well qualified, and that I would do a great job as a school board member, but they didn't know how they didn't know how to leverage me in a way that they could guarantee that I would vote the way they wanted me to vote every time I voted on something.
Yeah, that does seem to be a thing, right? It's always about voting blocks, right? It's never.
Yeah, but someone said that, actually said, I can't leverage you. So basically she said, you have too much integrity for me. I can't support you because, you're going to follow your conscience.
Oh, wow. I'm not surprised. I've faced that myself too. I'm sure you face it even more than I do, but I'm not surprised at all. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that before I moved to Iyad?
Do you feel like I answered the question adequately? I'm fine with stopping. I like to say less.
Okay, yeah, I think so. And we're gonna have a full discussion. So, okay, thank you. Iyad, it's your turn.
Yeah, right. It's Iyad. So it's surprising to a lot of people that my civic engagement in the United States did not start with my community. I'm Palestinian American, I'm an Arab American, I'm a Muslim American. I have a intersectional identity. So when I wanted to get involved, I couldn't find like the activism within my community. I was living in the third segregated city in the United States at that time in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I was going to school there, and I had extended family. But one thing I have noticed, I couldn't find a mentor. So surprisingly, a Palestinian American started his journey with the African American community. It was surprising to people, but there was a purpose for that, because as someone who grew up under occupation, I was able to relate to my siblings in the African American community, being the underdog, being someone who doesn't have a voice. So I started volunteering within the African American community in terms of registering voters, working with youth at risk at one point. And during that journey, I started working on a campaign for a Jewish American senator. His name is Russ Feingold, who happened to be one of the most progressive senators that we ever had during that era when I started getting involved. So having said that, that moved me to work for universal health care. So I have been advocating for universal health care since the college days for almost 2 decades. And surprisingly enough to a lot of people, I have about 75% of my mentors, they are Jewish Americans. So again, a Palestinian American having his mentors are Jewish Americans. And again, that brought another unmet need. Someone have to be on the table. Someone have to tell the story. And that's why I am not leaving the table, because of you, as my inspiration, the Congresswoman Cheryl Chisholm, she said, if you are not on the table, you're on the menu. And if there is no chairs, bring your folding seat. So that's why I'm always bringing my folding chair with me, going everywhere to make sure I am telling our story and not having someone to tell it on our behalf, because I'm sick and tired of not having a voice, and also sick and tired not paving the road for someone like me who's an immigrant, someone who have to fight in order to have a space on the table. So I agree with my sister, Dr. Lawanda, about what she iterated. I refuse to be a token, just to say, oh, we do have someone who's a Palestinian, oh, we have someone who's an Arab American, oh, we have someone who's and the Democratic Party played this game very, very well, even before Photoshop, where you will have a rally for a presidential campaign and they just bring someone just to show diversity. So for me, I wanted to have a seat on the table with the voice. And Jenna, you know me, when I am in a space, I make a lot of people uncomfortable, not because of anything, because I speak truth to power. I'm always having the unpopular opinion, always fighting for the little guy. And also, I don't let anybody to box me, meaning I don't believe in a box. Period. The African American community is my community. The Native American community is my community. The environmental community is my. So I have a very like intersectional identity, and I believe there is only one race, and that's a human race. So I wanted to bring a new concept to the Democratic Party. I'm sick and tired of the progressive label. So I am a humanitarian Democrat, because a lot of people, they just say they are progressive just to get elected. And then once they are done with no filters, they give us the middle finger, just like what happened when I was a Bernie delegate in 2016. We raised hell. We went to the convention in Philadelphia, and then we had to blame it on Russia just to get away with what we did to the progressive movement as a Democratic Party. So I stand my ground, and I say it over and over, and I use my example. I am not afraid to stand alone, especially if I have a legitimate case. And I will end with this, so I give a chance for other people. Until the lion learn how to tell their story, the hunter will be always glorified. This is an African proverb, and I wanted always to be present to tell our story and bring other people to the table. So this way, I am the bridge for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iyad, and I sincerely apologize. I have heard your name pronounced so many different ways, but I will stick that in my head. And if we still have Mondale on the call, if you want to say anything before your flight takes off, here's your opportunity. We may have missed him. So Mondale was literally hopping on a flight at that moment.
I'm supposed to be off right now, but I definitely am extremely excited about what I'm hearing and what y'all are doing. Iyad, I would push back a little bit about on intersectionality being the same as being a part of a community. To say that you are the Native community and also Black community is to discount the suffering. And also, when you say we're only one race, it eliminates all of the suffering that has happened to people that look like me because we're Black. And that's dangerous. And it is not conducive to change and growth. So being an ally is wonderful. Talking about being a part of a community that you don't belong to, erase people's experience, and that's a dangerous thing that we should never want to do. I would love to be a part of this conversation further. I need to get off before the agents get here. Thank you so much, Jenna and JoJo, for inviting me. I'll be back as soon as you invite me. Peace.
Thank you so much, Mondale. We are so grateful to have you this evening, and have a safe flight. Okay, so I'll transition to the next topic. I think, one important thing to note is that everybody that's on the panel today has some level of challenge from discrimination in their life, some more than others. Obviously, we have Muslim Arab American, we've got a couple of African Americans, Black people on the call, we have some women on the call, and we have some Jewish people on the call. So everybody has, now some of us have the benefit of white privilege. So there are things that we don't experience that some of you do. So I guess the question is that with, all of these various diversities amongst us, what can we do? How do we come together to find that intersectionality and coalesce and be successful at actually electing the people that we want to get elected and implementing the type of progressive policy that we want to see implemented? So let's kick that one off with Dr. Lawana.
Why do you want to start with me this time? Can you repeat the question?
It's an intersectionality question about how do we come together as various groups with various discriminatory things that happen against us and find that intersectionality so that we can actually coalesce behind candidates that are going to, or policies even, that will represent us, but also being considerate of that there might be, I know I'm changing the question a little bit, being considerate of the fact that we may need certain legislation that only applies to helping one group. I think this is a big problem, is that, and I've said this before on some of my live streams, is that I think the topic wedge issues is a real problem for everybody, because I believe it's control issues, that when you identify something as being a wedge issue that only applies to one group, that what you're really saying is we're going to go ahead and let policy stand that affects one group in a negative way and controls them. So,
okay.
So the question is, how do we come together so that we can find a way to not only support and lift up each other, but also see the, how do we be successful in moving progressive policy forward?
Okay, so first,
question.
Right, so first I'm gonna say something extraordinarily corny. Everything that I needed to learn about how to treat people and play well with others, I learned in kindergarten. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you. All right, the other part of that though is, I have to say, I am exhausted and frankly unnerved by the fact that I still have people saying things like, well, yeah, I know so-and-so did this racist thing or made this policy that harms your community, but we really need their support on this other thing. So I think we should reelect them and continue to give them more power. And we want you to go along. I don't want to hear that again, because at some point we say that we have certain values and we stand by certain principles. I do not have time for performative diversity. If we're really talking about being a big tent and being considerate of everyone, we've got to find a way to actually be considerate and not ask people to compromise their values for some other value that is considered more important. at the moment. The other part of that, though, is, you know, we really need to learn each other's history a little bit. And I say that because, you know, I spent my whole life learning white history. It was basically white male history. And I took it upon myself to take every opportunity I could to learn other histories, not just my own, the histories of other people. Because when you understand where a person is coming from, you begin to understand why this thing that you think is insignificant is actually very important to that person. And you would not presume to ask them to compromise on that important issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about intersectionality, you know, I've constantly, you know, there's so many different boxes people want to put me in. They want to put me in the academic box, or they want to put me in the girl box, or they want to put me in the Black box, or they want to put me in the older woman box. And I don't believe in any of those boxes. But what I do believe is that if we really let respect and appreciation and kindness guide us in our values and how we treat one another, we'll get so much more done. And we have to learn, you know, so I saw a meme recently that said, before I argue with anyone, I have to ask myself, do they have the emotional maturity to understand that it's possible for other viewpoints to exist outside of their experience? So my challenge to all of us is that when we're engaging, because sometimes we can be internally quite unkind to one another. And I think we're so busy listening for the pause to make our point that we're not listening for the reason that this person feels so strongly about whatever it is they say. And when will we learn how to engage in a way that we grow and develop into a more cohesive and compassionate unit that is also effective? Because kindness and love for your community and love for the people that you serve is not a weakness. It is actually a great strength. I point to Councilmember Monica Montgomery. The love that she shows her community is absolutely one of the things that contributes to her power, because people know that she wants to do the right thing and believe in her. So even if she makes a choice or a decision that people don't understand, most of us don't throw her out with the bathwater. We give her the opportunity to explain why she did this thing that we don't understand. And I think that that's a space we have to get to. But meanwhile, we don't want people with character. We want people that we can control because we've got leverage on them. And as long as we want to control people, and as long as we only want to vote for people who support and believe in every single thing that we believe in, we're always going to be challenged. Because guess what? There are 7 of us in this Zoom call, and I can guarantee you that there are things that we disagree on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Lawana. You're absolutely right. And to your point about emotional maturity, I think that's why I end up blocking a lot of people on social media, because I realize they don't have the emotional maturity to engage. And why waste my time at that point? You know, if they're just going to just be combative and argue constantly, how is that effective? You can't really move forward if you're doing that. Jojo, do you want to weigh in?
Well, I'd like to inspire a bit further discussion on that, because I thought that was, everybody is so articulate. We're covering everything that kind of brings us up to the present moment, how we got here, how we're viewing it, how we perceive the division. We've used a lot of adjectives. I would like to know, how do we inspire people moving forward to be whole, to be whole in the discussion, transitioning into a more intersectional, a more inclusive environment in the Democratic Party, one that understands progressives as well as it does the more centrist objectives. So that was my question. I see Wade has put his hand up, or is that what?
Is that a clap, or did you want to?
Well, I'll let him go first.
I think we have Iyad and then Wade then, if you want to let somebody go first.
Yeah. So one of the things about what my sister said, Dr. Lawanda, is the fact is the Democratic Party in many occasions try to box marginalized communities. But before I go to that point, I just want to mention there was in the chat a notion it might be misconstrued about the fact is when I said it's one race. That doesn't equal all lives matter. If someone is trying to understand it that way, what I meant by that is, in order to move forward with the progress, we have to view each other as a human being and understand we can make mistakes. We learn from our experiences. But most importantly, when there is a marginalized community, they are under attack or they are oppressed, we have to stand by them and give them the driver's seat. Give them the driver's seat. And we just take the passenger seat and tell them, hey, I am with you. We are in the same bus. We are in the same car. I'll be here to support you, but not to speak on their behalf. When I said the African American community is my community, I did not want that to be understood as like I am owning, I have an ownership of, or I have a license to speak to the pain and suffering of my sisters and brothers in the African community. What I meant with that, like I am an ally, and it is about kinship. It's about kinship. So it's not just allyship, it's about kinship and like feeling as if we are one family, and we are not just expanding our tent, we are employing curiosity over assumption. Employing curiosity over assumption, where unfortunately, with the more I get involved with the Democratic Party, the more I find a lot of leaders, they are ignorant in our history. African American history is American history. Asian American history is American history. So like when Juneteenth Day became an official holiday, this is late, better than never. However, in one meeting that day, I was in a committee meeting at the Democratic Party, and many leaders of the Democratic Party who've been leaders for 20 plus years or so, they never knew what's Juneteenth. They did not know where it started, what are the significance of it. So we have to start learn what I wanted to say, like Dr. Lawana Richardson, what she said is, if I can translate what she said, we are burned out. We are sick and tired of the cultural taxation that we have to educate people about ourselves, where it is the responsibility of people in the party and outside the party to learn about their neighbors, to learn about immigrants, to learn about their struggles. So this is very important, because the cultural taxation, it kind of like it is a heavy burden for us to shoulder, that every time someone do a crazy thing, as an Arab American, I am not obligated to go and apologize to anybody about anything, because it is not me. It is not like, you know, the whole community, when there is 0.0001% a crazy person does something, that I have to apologize for them. So this is something like we have to come to terms, and we have to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other, where we say anti-Semitism is not welcome, and homophobia is not welcome, Islamophobia is not welcome, and making sure that we don't have a transactional politics. It's not when you stand with me, I stand with you. It is unconditional. Doing the right thing is the right thing to do. And there is no right time to do the right thing. It's always the right time to do the right thing.
Thank you, Iyad. Dr. Lawana, did you have your hand up to respond to that, or is that from before?
It was to respond, but I think that it's been covered really well. So I don't really need to add anything.
Okay, then we'll go to Wade next.
So the question was about making the party more intersectional, truly intersectional, right? And I would say the way to do that is to be an ally and to listen, right? And when someone speaks about their issues, you have to really actually hear them, right? And then when you hear them on their issues, right? When you hear Palestinian Americans speak about their issues, or when you hear Black people speak about their issues, or women speak about their issues, you don't just follow up with words, you support them through your actions, right? And that's how we can do it. You know, we can make this a party that represents and is truly representative of everyone.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
This is kind of coming out in this discussion subtly, but I think it's interesting that some people focus on the progressives to move the Democratic Party left. Some people focus on messaging to, you know, the more centrist Democrats, the longtime party advocates. So how do we bring those two together? Yeah, I think that the comment that was made about listening, you know, how do we teach people to see our reflection in one another? Because I have a hard time sometimes seeing my progressive reflection in a diehard, you know, centrist Democrat that votes with the establishment. So feedback on that part of this is a good thing.
So can I?
Yes, you can go first, and then I'm going to ask JoJo that since this is your question, you get to call on people.
So JoJo, I do want to say that you know, that my grandma used to say, "Every shut eye ain't sleep," and so you will have. I mean, there were people who thought I was, and they thought I was an accommodationist because I used to be very quiet, and I was quiet because I was listening. Because you need to understand not just the people who think like you need to understand the people who don't think like you, because yes, messaging is important, but messaging doesn't really mean anything if you don't understand your audience. And so part of it is, you know, they say somebody's got to be the bigger person. Part of this is understanding how people got to where they are, and how the person is embracing centrist values, not because they want to swing things to the right, but because they're afraid that if they aren't accommodating enough, nothing will get done. There are some people that believe that's expediency and that's the path. And so part of it is, you know, what are you willing to risk? And then what do you have to lose? And getting really clear on that.
I think if we could learn not only to listen, but to meet one another on somebody's wavelength. I remember in Europe, I studied NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. It teaches you how to understand where people are coming from and meet them on that level. And a lot of people use it in sales, but I find that I use it a lot in talking to other people that are politically interested and getting on their level, getting into their box and cozying up a bit. I think a specific part of this to get to like an action item, how do we get into their box, and how do we include, you know, do we start having get together rallies, progressives with Democrats, and start like having kumbaya festivals? I really want to know, how do we move to the next step? If we can implement some of all these wonderful suggestions about communication and understanding and actualizing the process.
I would add to this, always show up, always be there. Yes, you might have an uncomfortable conversation with someone, but it puts you in a situation where you start getting out of your bubble. Because for us as progressives, we are always in our bubble, and we I want to swear now, we damn know that we have some family members who are Republicans. We have some family members who voted for Trump. And we have some progressives, they exited and they come back and they keep playing this like seesaw game where like up and down, up and out. So we have to be consistent by staying there and take like making sure that our presence is felt and our absence is felt. Our presence is felt and our absence is felt. I wasn't in the floor of the convention in Philadelphia in 2016, along with my wife. Both of us, we were honored to be elected as Bernie delegates, and a lot of our friends, they were exiting, and we have to plead to them and say, please stay. And thank God, a lot of them, they listened. It's all about the trust that we have and about the relationship that we have. And I always tell people, the relationship, the bonding that happened between the Bernie delegates in 2016, it will never be duplicated. 2020 was a completely different game because everything was virtual. People, they did not have that human connection. But when we went there and we saw how frustrated, how we were cheated during the process, whether people they want to hear it or not. Yes, we were cheated as progressives in 2016. But I came with lessons from that, which is, okay, why we were cheated? Because we did not know so many rules. We did not understand the difference between a movement and a party. Movement is more fluid than a party. The party has a structure, has policies and procedures. You have to understand where you can add value. And I am privileged to be in the presence of Dr. Lawana here, because she hit every issue on the head. One of the things she started with is, if I am in a space and I feel my presence is not going to add a value, I will go to some space where it will add value. With the Democratic Party, it's not easy to stay on task and focus, because we as a progressives, sometimes we have the division within ourselves. As you mentioned, Jojo, we might not agree on everything, and we might call ourselves all progressives, but we have to understand it is important sometimes to have confrontations and sometimes to have conversations. Yes, there are time for confrontation is when you not putting the effort in order to understand where I'm coming from. It takes effort in order to understand. Yes, there are some litmus tests. There are certain values, but I came to a point where it is very draining dealing with our progressives and dealing with the establishment at the same time when we don't have an action plan. Where are we going from here? So we have to have a plan for freedom from to freedom to. Freedom from, freedom to. So we have to be free from our own bubbles, and we have to make sure that we are organizing and building community and stop doing gossip about each other, because this is just like where the Republicans, they are succeeding, is they are speaking the people's language. They are speaking the common person language. For us, we love to code everything. We have to call it AB 1400, AB 1400. But the common person, they want to know, I want to guarantee healthcare for everyone. They want to hear healthcare. We have to speak the language of the common man. So as Democrat, as someone who is a professor and teaching this to my students, I always tell them, know your audience. It is very important when you are speaking with lawyers to use that language. But when you are talking to your neighbor while you're having a barbecue, Tell them I am for healthcare for everyone. Don't tell them I'm for AB 1400. You just gonna look like cool. No, tell them what it is. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, did we hear from Wade too on this one?
Okay, can you repeat that question one more time?
Well, we were talking about actual transition to a more productive way of becoming more unified as a party between the progressive left and the center part of the party.
Okay, so my take on that is simple, right? We have to stand firm in our values, right? We can work together with other people without compromising our values, right? We have to stand firm on our values as much as we possibly can, but we also have to be inclusive and embracing of other people, right? So when I organize a progressive event, I invite everyone, whether or not they particularly agree with my viewpoint or not. I go out of my way to invite people who might disagree with my viewpoint, right? So we have to make sure that it's known that we are inclusive and that we're going to embrace you and gradually bring more people into the loop, right? Bring them into the fold of our movement, make them want to be invested in our movement. And that's how I stand on it. Just try to, people are capable of changing what their viewpoints are, right? So if someone isn't quite as progressive as you are, you can start a conversation with them, a friendly, civil conversation with them over time and bring them over to your side or as close to your side as you possibly can get them to be.
Some patience. You're suggesting some patience. Right. Okay. Thank you all for participating.
Okay. Let me put my video back on. So I have another question, and then JoJo has one that she's going to circle back through the chat to refresh her memory that she wants to ask another question. So my question is in regards to the actual physical act of DemEntering, the act of running for party elections, whether it be central committee, whether it be assembly district delegate, whether it be trying to establish relationships with or running for actual office where you get a delegate role in your central committee or your state party, whether, or DNC, however it works, or you to form a relationship with a candidate in which they will appoint you. There is a lot of, one of the things that I was kind of going on about earlier this year when we were going through assembly district delegate elections was selected, not elected, because the only way that we can actually reform the bylaws so that we make it so that it's more elected and less selected is if we get enough people in, but the system seems to be stacked against us. And even in our own progressive circles, there seem to be people who are trying to create in clubs, and Iyad kind of touched on this too, the gossip, right? The gossip, the smear campaigns, and everything else that have the nastiness that happens to say, well, you're not progressive enough, and you're not going to be included in my in club, and you're not going to be included in my slate. And then people who are trying to say, well, I'm going to make a power move and determine who's a progressive throughout the state of California, or how, I think this is more prevalent in California than in other states. Maybe it might be in Florida and New York as well. But we have these sort of power players who are trying to make control moves and determine who is truly progressive, to the point that they're even like establishing PACs to do it, putting big money into data resources to skirt the system as much as possible. And it's basically what we were complaining that Hillary was doing in 2016 with the DNC delegates, the super delegates, that she was lining them up a year in advance so that there was no chance for their challenger to even get through, because every time a primary election happened, despite the fact that Bernie was actually winning more of the popular vote, the news would report that Hillary got more delegates because she had already courted the super delegates and was working the party, and she was doing more to work the party. And it just seemed really unfair, I think, to a lot of us. And they did some reforms through the DNC to reduce the power of the superdelegates so that it would be a bit more fair. But we're seeing that on the progressive side too, that people are sort of emulating what Hillary did by trying to line up their own people too and shutting others out. So, what are your thoughts on the whole slate thing? And how do we get independent thinkers into the party? Because I think, independent thinkers are more likely to be respectful of each other and try and find that common ground and work together. And okay, I agree with you on this one, but I don't agree with you on that one. So I'm willing to work with you on Green New Deal, maybe, but maybe you disagree with me on reproductive healthcare rights. That's another one. Oh man. So like right after Trump got elected, Nancy Pelosi kind of freaked out and was like, we can't do a purity test. I don't know if you guys remember this, but that's literally where the purity test labeling came from. Was there were some special elections and one of the candidates that was running was like, I'm Catholic, I don't believe in this. And she insisted that we couldn't issue purity tests when that's a really important issue to women, and we outnumber y'all. I'm just saying, we outnumber y'all. So I'd like to talk about this whole concept of these power players who are doing slates, defaming people, slandering people, throwing out smear campaigns, and saying you're not in with the in club and you are not progressive enough. So let me first I'm going to throw that to Iyad first, because I know that you used to do slates, like you used to be involved in like slate building, right?
Yes. So when it comes to the slates, it's a double-edged sword. It is good for progressive to have slates, but it is also at the same time, we have to have independent thinkers, but slates is one of the essential things in how you can build the movement and how you can work with others. But the biggest problem within our party is the establishment introduced that part of the bargain, part of the game. One other layer of my intersectional identity, I'm also the president of my union at Cal State Dominguez Hills. So when I am dealing with my siblings in labor, there is like the common concept among people, you don't question labor. No, we should question labor, because not all unions, they are on the side of the people. There are sometimes a problem with the way things are done. Like, for example, I will point out my sisters and brothers in the building and trade union. When it comes to the environmental factors, sometimes they ignore the environmental factors in the name of we have to create jobs. I repeat, we ignore environmental factors because we have to create jobs. So that's why I don't like the concept of saying we are union. I like to say we are with the working class. We are with the people, because a lot of people, unfortunately, they weaponize that. I see that in my circles. I speak up within my union and other unions. It should not be a country club. I'm not saying unions are country clubs. It's the party created the environment where it's like a club, and you have that purity test and so on and so forth. So just to recap, there is nothing wrong with the slates as long as the person who is making the slates, they have the integrity to be inclusive. Have the integrity is to open doors for others and not follow into the gossip. Like in the 2019, I ran on a slate, and while I am in the slate, I was disagreeing with 50% of the people on the slate, because in every movement there is show horses and there are working horses. So I felt I was used just to form a slate, and in order to help the progressives, while the people who were on the slate, some of them, they are just hijacking. I don't like to use the word hijacking, being a Middle Eastern myself, because it has some connotations to it. But people, they kind of co-opted the movement. And because they voted for Bernie in 2016, they think like now they are progressive. No, there are some Republicans voted for Bernie as well, because Bernie was a principled guy. They hated voting for Hillary, for example, or voting for Trump. So you can have that litmus test. If you voted for Bernie, then you are progressive. Unfortunately, in 2020 campaign, the Obama, let me put it this way, the Obama camp managed to make sure to infiltrate the Sanders campaign. So there was a lot of people that have nothing to do with feeling the burn. They never felt the burn, but they wanted the $90,000 job to be an organizer. They wanted the $65,000 job to be an organizer. They want to build that brand. And that was at the expense of Bernie, including some people from his advisors. Because in 2016, I was one of his campaign advisors on healthcare and foreign affairs. And I saw Bernie firsthand. He is the $1 million deal. The guy is the same behind closed doors. He is the same on TV. He is the same with the people. He is very human. But the people around him, they are something else. Let me put it this way.
Oh, Iyad, you are speaking so much truth right now. I mean, absolutely. On the union thing, yeah, there's unions of all different levels. There are some that are more progressive. There are some that are more just about creating jobs at any expense. What you just said was so, you laid down a lot of truth right there. So Wade you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I was just going to comment on the whole slate things and just the whole delegate and ADEM process, right? So if a group of people decide that their values are aligned and that they're going to run together as a team, that's not necessarily in my book a problem, right? I don't know if slates are the problem as a whole, right? What I would see as the main problem with the delegate process overall is the way that the electeds put their thumb on the scale, right? And the way that there's a third of the delegates are appointed, right? A third of the delegates are appointed by powerful party leaders and electeds. That is a huge problem in my book. And that's the reason why certain establishment figures are able to maintain their power within the Democratic Party, because there's so many people that are appointed by the electeds and party leaders. So they don't actually need to cover that much ground in terms of winning in the delegate elections, right? Because they already control such a large chunk of it. So I feel like we need to really reform the delegate process to minimize or just get rid of entirely appointed delegates.
I'll definitely agree with that. And also, I'd like to point out that in the 4.5 years that I've been participating at this point, what I've noticed is that every year that we do ADEMs, we always have problems. We always have complaints. And every year they say they're going to reform, and every year they squash our attempts to reform. Even our progressive organizations, where we're trying to do it through our progressive organizations and educate the people who participated in the process and on how to organize to actually demand reform within the party, even that gets squashed. Dr. Lawana, I see that your hand is up. Go ahead.
Can I just say that I think that Iyad has to leave us now. So you?
Iyad, do you have anything final that you want to say before you go? Thank you so much for joining us, by the way.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for giving us the space to discuss this important matter. One thing I wanted to say, as a progressives, we need to abolish the term or the phrase DemEnter and DemExit. because that's very harmful for the movement and it makes us feel like we are the other. The other thing in terms of the ADEM, ADEM, by the way, was created for the grassroots and was created with the pressure of my sister Christine Pelosi, the former chair of the Women Caucus. She fought tooth and nail to create that. So the elected officials, they should be out. Like the central committees, they should be out. County chairs, they should be out of this game. They should not be using their power. They should not using their voice in order to put their thumb on the scale. That's corruption. We can't point finger to the Republicans while we having three fingers, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, pointing to us, because we are guilty. We are not holy. So we have to start calling that as it's supposed to be. ADEM is for grassroots. That's why it's 1/3 of the delegates. So thank you very much for having here. It has been a great pleasure being in the company of everyone here, and we need to have more conversations.
We do.
Jenna and I, we might disagree on a lot of things, but we do agree on one thing, is we do have to have some difficult conversations, and we need to be truthful, and we have to honor each other in terms of like having a space for everyone to say what they need to say in order to move our movement forward. So thank you very much, Jenna, for bringing this together, and I'm so glad I was able to make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Iyad.
Thank you, Iyad.
And I don't know if you saw the chat, but Mondale wants to follow up with you. You made an impression.
I'd like to follow up with Iyad as well.
Okay.
I will drop my email in the chat before I leave. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
So-
you. Have a lovely evening.
So what I want to say is, you know, and I say this as someone who was elected and appointed. So I was elected to be the ADM, the assembly delegate, an assembly delegate for the 79th Assembly District. And then I was appointed by the county party to be be a delegate for the county. And I looked at the list of people in terms of who would be next up on the list of delegates, and realized very quickly that if I accepted the appointment and resigned from the elected position, I would be creating space for another woman of color to then become a delegate. And so I think it is less about abolishing policy and more about understanding how it works and how to be strategic about in aligning with it, but also being actively engaged. Quite often we put people in positions of power and we forget what we've given them the power to do. I know, you know, part of the reason I'm co-chairing the Candidate Evaluations Committee is that when people are running for office, they will say whatever they need to say to get elected. And then after they get elected, they'll do whatever they want to do. An example would be the first San Diego City Council meeting after the election, where all these elected officials who ran on progressive values made a less than progressive decision about who should be president of the city council. I say all that to say things, you know, sometimes we oversimplify things. And I think that instead of, you know, trying to abolish things, I think we need to do a better job of working together and a better job of identifying allies in order to make things happen. The other part of that is, you know, when someone disagrees with you or sees things differently, to attack them is not going to make them change their mind.
So Jojo, before we go to your last question, which I think we're only going to have time for your last question, I want to go ahead and, since we have such a small group now that we've had some drop-offs, I want to open it up to the other two attendees to see if they want to weigh in on the conversation at this point, and then move into your final question. So let me unmute the other two people. And if you guys want to jump in, so we have David Barlavi. I don't know if Tom's still, I don't know if you're already unmuted.
Yeah.
I don't have an unmute button for Tom, but David, I just unmute. I asked for you to unmute. They may have walked away. So go ahead. Go ahead with your final question.
Well, I put a few in the chats. Which one do you want me to ask, Jenna?
Whichever one you feel best. We're at 5:30 right now, so we're going to do one more question and then have like final wrap-up comments.
Then I'm going to be selfish and ask one that particularly benefits the part of the state of California that I work in. It's a diverse, progressive energy with a lot of socialists. And I came back from Europe. I lived in Europe in the 90s, and I came back a socialist. So I've been doing this a while. I know how to talk to people and help educate them about socialism, but a lot of people don't. And I would like to talk a little bit about how to educate the diversity in the Democratic Party in socialism. Bernie's doing a great job, but how can we do it on the ground with our voices? Is there any input on that?
Wade, do you want to weigh in on that?
I have some input on that, and sorry I was away from my phone earlier.
I knew it. All right, we have Dave Barlavi. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hey guys, I'm Dave Barlavi. I am a local school board member in Santa Clarita. I've been a burner since 1992, and currently I'm running for city council. So I'm having a good time out here, getting lots of support and bringing the progressive agenda to purple Santa Clarita. It's not easy, but I think we could do it. And as far as the socialism question goes, you know, America for a very, very long time has been about 50% socialist. You know, we have a public school system, that's socialism. We have fire departments, we have police departments, that's all socialist. Those are not private, those are government funded, owned by the government. We have the VA, Veterans Administration, healthcare, we have Medicare, we have Social Security, we have public transit. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? We have public highways and streets. Those are not privately owned. So America is about half socialist as it is. What people don't realize is that those things are socialism and that they need to get comfortable with it. And all we're trying to do is make it even better by bringing Medicare for all to the country, by making wages livable wages, and so on and so forth. So I think every time I have to explain it, I always start with how we have been socialist for a very, very long time, but we need to pump it up a little bit. That is all. Back to you, Jenna.
Wade, what are you doing in the Antelope Valley? How do people feel about it up there? Oh, how come you don't say muted, but I can't hear you?
We hear nothing from you, Wade.
That's weird, and he doesn't say unmuted. Or
yeah, he might be muted on his computer.
Oh. Can't hear you, Wade. Nope.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, now I hear you very,
very faintly.
Softly.
But let's go to Dr. Lawana before Wade, if he's not available just right now.
Okay, what would you like me to weigh in on now?
Well, I like I'd like to just hear what everybody thinks about socialism before we leave, and how to make, we were talking about unifying with the center part of the party. What about the left?
So, I mean, my great grandma, my grandma used to always say, too much of anything will make a dog sick. And I think sometimes, we go there and we do get into the too much space. I think the biggest thing is really for us to train ourselves, to go against everything that says we have to consider people who don't think exactly like us our enemies. And in our communication, even with people who espouse different values, to find that common ground, because you will not get people to change their mind by telling them they suck.
Yeah.
Great point.
So I think basically more discussions like this, to have a discussion that is, and maybe let's move away from debates and discuss things.
So Jojo, I don't agree with more discussions like this, not because I don't think this was a fine and pleasant discussion. I just feel like this was an echo chamber. And I would like to see us move away from echo chambers. I think there's a time to strategize and make sure you have clear talking points. But if you're trying to make change, you have to go talk to people who don't think like you, and you have to engage them in a way that they hear you. And so really, it's about identifying shared values and common ground and shared understanding and creating a shared vision, because I honestly believe that the Democratic Party lacks a shared vision. It has a compromised vision that dances to the tune of whatever the popular thought or ether is. Whatever is considered a popular issue right now is like the prima facie issue. But the reality is, we have a shared vision of everyone being able to live together, and you are consistent in that vision, you're still going to get to the same place when these different hot button issues arise, but you get there together, as opposed to people feeling like, we're, being led by distractions. What was on the news today? Okay, that's what we're going to rally around. I think that is the opposite of being strategic.
Right, and to have a truly democratic process too, also, so that the leadership reflects all of us and all of our values. Wade apparently had dropped off the call and needed to be unmuted again. So you are unmuted now, Wade.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't know what it is with my phone. Sometimes the volume cuts out. No, I just think that I do think it was a productive discussion, even though it was on the smaller side, because, just bringing together different perspectives. We are all progressive, but we all have very different perspectives on issues and come from a different life experience. So I feel like it was a productive discussion, and, we should definitely have another one like this in the future, and we should change it up a little and have other kinds of discussions, maybe with people who have other different viewpoints as well. So I really appreciate being invited here today.
Thank you, Wade. Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank all of you, all of the speakers, all of the participants for being here today. In these last minutes of the meeting, I want to give anybody an opportunity who has any sort of announcements to go ahead and talk about your organizations or upcoming events. Does anybody want to share anything? Dr. Lawana.
I was actually the second person to raise their hand, so I'll go to the first. He was raising his physical hand. So.
Oh, who was?
David.
David was? Okay, David, go ahead.
He's muted. Dave, unmute yourself, David. Jenna, unmute him.
I guess I need to unmute him. Okay.
Okay, thank you guys. By the way, I just want to say, Lawana, you're amazing. I really like how you talk about campaigning and how to run for office and I would vote for you if I could. So thank you so much for that. Also, I just want to say to progressives, what we're fighting for is it can lead us in two different directions. It could lead us in the direction of becoming really bitter. And
He's muted again.
How did that happen? Okay, hang on.
Can you guys hear me still?
We can hear you now, but I don't know if you're hitting a funny button or something.
Well, I got a call from my son. I had to hang it up, but I'll call him back after. So anyways, what I was saying was it can make us really frustrated, really bitter almost, very confrontational. But what we're actually fighting for is really fun, exciting stuff. And I think if we took that approach whenever we're trying to win people over, or more importantly, when we're running for office, if we really just take a happy, joyful, fun approach to the message we're bringing to the public, and talk to our constituents and our supporters like they're our friends, and don't fall for the cookie cutter way of doing things that the Democratic establishment tries to push down our throats. I think we could win a lot of races. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody. Thank you. And just keep it fun, keep it exciting, and, approach progressive politics like you do when you're going out for drinks, or, going out and dancing or something like that. Just approach it in a really fun way. And then we could be attractive and we could really build that mass movement. Thank you. And I'll stop now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Lawana.
Okay, so people who know me know that I'm like a big nerd, all right? So I mentioned earlier that I was an Afrofuturist. What I didn't mention is my event, the AfroCon, which will be taking place Labor Day weekend at the Jackie Robinson Y. It's basically a Black Comic-Con on the surface, and then beneath it, it's a gathering of international Afrofuturists. So, what you look for when you get there is what you'll find, but it'll be a good time for everybody.
That sounds so awesome. I love that. I'm a nerd too. Okay, does anybody else have anything they want to share before we conclude? Okay, well, thank you all so much. I think we had a really great discussion, and I'm going to conclude the recording, but I'm going to leave the meeting up for a few minutes if you guys would just want to chat, because I need to make sure that I can retain the chat for you all so I can get your links and contact information and everything. But we'll conclude the recording and the broadcast at this point. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
I'm trying to save the chat.